Think about this. When we go to Mars, we're the aliens. And this is where the hell begins. I'm Gary Orona, and this is Tabitha Stevens. In this documentary, we're going to look into what it would be like for humans to actually live and exist on the planet Mars. It sounds exciting, it sounds thrilling, but what's the reality? What are the issues we'd be dealing with? And some of these are life and death issues. Now, when we go to Mars, we'll be the aliens. And I believe that could be where the hell begins.
So Gary, why are we here at this particular location?
We're here because this is one of our movie sets. This is a post-apocalyptic science fiction set. And I think Tabitha would agree with me when I say that it's in places like this that these ideas emerge, that they evolve. When you film in places that are extremely barren, where solitude is the order of the day, you realize really quickly that there could be some psychological and physical issues when living in a place like Mars. So hang in there to the end of the video, and Tabitha and I are going to reveal some experiences that we've had that might just change your mind with respect to whether living on Mars would be such a cool thing. So let's dig into this. Let's jump down this rabbit hole. Let's examine the science. Let's examine the psychology. And let's take a look at what living on Mars might really be like.
The idea of humans living on Mars has captivated the collective imagination for decades. In recent years, scientific advancements and technological breakthroughs have brought us closer to the possibility of establishing a permanent human presence on the red planet. However, the challenges that would be faced by humans living on Mars are substantial and varied. Let's explore some of the key obstacles and considerations that would arise in this ambitious endeavor. First, the harsh environment and lack of atmosphere on Mars. Mars presents a hostile environment that is vastly different from Earth. The thin atmosphere lacks sufficient oxygen and protection from harmful radiation. The average temperature on Mars is significantly colder than on Earth, reaching as low as -80 degrees Fahrenheit, -62 degrees Celsius. Surviving in such extreme conditions would require the development of advanced life support systems, including protective suits, habitat structures, and controlled environments to regulate temperature and radiation exposure.
Atmosphere, radiation, temperature. Wow. Mars is extreme. Now, we've filmed in a lot of really, really cold places.
Oh, yeah.
And being bundled up all the time where you just can't unbundle becomes depressing, right?
Well, not just that. Then sometimes you overbundle and then you have to take some of the bundling off because you're sweating, but then you get cold again. So yeah, we've got that. Yeah, the cold isn't my favorite. I don't know, the wind is okay, but still.
Can you imagine being in a place where you always have to be bundled up as if you're living on, let's say, Antarctica?
No, and with the wind.
And with the wind.
Forget that. No, can't do it.
And with the wind.
I can't do it.
See, we forget sometimes when we see the images of Mars, I think we forget what it feels like in extreme environments. And, well, today's a good example. The wind, as you can see, is blowing. It was much windier earlier. And we oftentimes get into situations where we can't film because the wind is so extreme. We literally cannot film. And on top of just the inability sometimes to perform or do your job or whatever you need to do because of the elements, consider this. Consider the possibility of living in Antarctica year-round, no relief, and always being bundled up if you're going to head outside for a walk. Now, it doesn't seem like much, but there is this little thing called cabin fever. And you're cooped up for enough time in a cabin, and humans literally go crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So we lived in a place not long ago where the winters were extreme, oftentimes in 0 degrees Fahrenheit, oftentimes weeks on end. And what would happen then with us?
We'd have to stay inside.
And
Go crazy.
go crazy. Literally go crazy. There's a lot to be said about being able to simply step outside and go for a walk and throw on a pair of shorts, pair of flip-flops,
Yep.
and go for a walk. And these things would simply not be possible. My thought is that sooner or later that's going to drive you a little bit batty, right? That these simple things that we can do that we take for granted would be such complicated tasks. To go for a walk on Mars might mean an hour, 2 hours, perhaps, of assembling your suit, your life support system, your boots, your gloves, running system checks to check everything and make sure that when you step outside that door, you're not going to get irradiated, fried by the radiation. Doesn't have the atmosphere Earth does, doesn't have the protection, right? Or instantly frozen with your fingers falling off from frostbite because you're unprotected and didn't realize it. I mean, there are these things to think about. Atmosphere, temperature, these things, radiation, are serious. I mean, can you imagine that any exposure of your skin would mean instant 3rd-degree burns, right, from the radiation? And then, of course, skin cancers and whatnot, which who knows what would happen with that kind of consistent and constant exposure to radiation. So these are things to think about with respect to Mars, and these are things that science is going to have to perfect with respect to suits, and later on we'll get into the psychology of what that might mean.
One of the most prominent challenges of living on Mars is its thin atmosphere, which is approximately 1% the density of Earth's atmosphere. This thinness provides little protection from harmful cosmic radiation and solar flares, which pose significant health risks to humans. Prolonged exposure to radiation can increase the likelihood of developing cancer and other radiation-related ailments. Additionally, the sparse atmosphere does not filter out ultraviolet UV radiation effectively, further increasing the risk of skin damage and other UV-related health problems. And then there are the extreme temperature variations. The average temperature on Mars is significantly colder than on Earth, with average temperatures ranging from -80 degrees Fahrenheit, -62 degrees Celsius, in winter to -195 degrees Fahrenheit, -125 degrees Celsius, near the poles. These extreme temperature variations make it challenging for humans to survive without proper insulation and climate control systems. Living quarters and spacesuits would need to provide effective insulation to protect inhabitants from the frigid temperatures, while also regulating internal temperatures to maintain a habitable environment. And what about the scarcity of liquid water on Mars? Liquid water is a fundamental requirement for human life. Yet Mars is an arid planet with a scarcity of accessible water. While water ice has been detected in some regions, obtaining sufficient quantities of liquid water would be a complex task. Extracting and processing water from underground ice deposits or through the techniques such as melting permafrost would be necessary for sustaining human settlements. Water is vital for agriculture, sanitation, and the production of breathable oxygen, making its availability crucial for long-term habitation on Mars.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the psychological issues, the isolation, the lack of communication, the need for self-reliance. So isolation first. You're not going to be around a whole lot of humans when you're on Mars. You're going to be confined to a small core group of people, most likely. And as we know from our experiences, this can create tremendous stress. So the psychological issue of long periods of extreme isolation would be tough to overcome.
I think that there'd have to be medication prepared for people. You would have to think, because of the depression that's going to set in at points, because it will happen. I mean, when you're alone for so long, your thoughts get ahead of you. You know, you're going to need some help. And if you don't have a psychiatrist there, you might need medication.
True. Reliant upon medication to keep yourself sane because you're so isolated. And again, that island fever thing kicks in, right? The cabin fever thing kicks in, where you just feel completely closed in. Mm-hmm. And can you imagine sending a text to someone and having to wait a long period of time to get a return text, whether you like it or not?
Hey, what if there's an emergency? Hope you have more than 20 minutes, you know.
Right, and Tabitha just said 20 minutes, which is important, because on Mars, the communication back to Earth will take around up to 20 minutes, and then 20 minutes from Earth back to Mars. So you're looking at a 40-minute turnaround, right? So if there's a critical issue, a critical situation, you're going to have to wait. No question about it. 20 minutes for your message to get back to Earth, 20 minutes back to Mars. So problems, critical problems, perhaps even life or death situations are going to have this huge time lag. You're not going to be able to call in a helicopter. And if something mechanically goes wrong with the facility, with the living structure, with the dome, the pods, these things, you're not going to be able to call a plumber. Plumber's millions of miles away. An electrician's millions of miles away. You're going to have to be incredibly self-reliant.
And resourceful, because, where's the water coming from?
Right, exactly. You've got to be resourceful. What if your water pumps fail and you can't fix it, and you have critical information you need to fix the water pumps? These kinds of things seem so simple to us and we take for granted. But when you're millions of miles away from Earth, you either better have a whole bunch of specialists on hand, or you better be a jack of all trades. Actually, perhaps a master of all trades. Otherwise, you could get into some serious situations very quickly, and you may not have enough time. And that might wear on you psychologically too, right?
Oh, absolutely. You're in fear, constant fear, always wondering, what if? You hear a funny sound. What if that's the pod? What if something happened?
Absolutely, yes. So the psychological issues that might creep in without you even knowing that these psychological issues are creeping in could be critical. And I would say the psych evaluations of anybody going to Mars would be intense and ultra important.
Consider the high levels of radiation on Mars. Mars lacks a robust magnetic field like Earth's, which acts as a protective shield against solar radiation. As a result, the surface of Mars is bombarded by cosmic radiation and solar particles, posing a significant health risk to humans. Astronauts on Mars would face an increased likelihood of developing radiation-related illnesses such as cancer, radiation sickness, and damage to DNA. Shielding habitats with materials that can absorb or deflect radiation would be essential for mitigating these risks. And then there are the dust storms and atmospheric challenges. Mars is known for its frequent and intense dust storms that can engulf the entire planet. These storms can last for weeks or even months, reducing visibility and posing risks to human activities and equipment. The fine dust particles suspended in the atmosphere can also damage machinery, clog air filters, and cause respiratory problems. Designing robust infrastructure and developing effective dust mitigation strategies would be crucial for maintaining the functionality of habitats and equipment in the face of these challenging atmospheric conditions. The composition of its soil is a critical challenge, which must be overcome for any human endeavor on Mars. The composition of Martian soil creates significant challenges for the possibility of human settlement on Mars. The composition of soil on Mars is a key factor in assessing the difficulties humans would face in establishing a sustainable settlement on the Red Planet. Understanding the challenges posed by Martian soil is crucial for developing strategies to overcome these obstacles and ensure the success of future human missions to Mars. First, it's important to understand that as human exploration of Mars becomes a tangible reality, understanding the composition of Martian soil is paramount. Soil composition affects various aspects of human habitation, such as agriculture, resource utilization, and overall sustainability. Martian soil primarily consists of silicate minerals, including basalt and feldspar. These minerals contribute to the physical and chemical properties of the soil and affect its fertility and potential agricultural use. Iron oxides, such as FeO and Fe2O3, are responsible for the reddish hue of Martian soil. Sulfates, like calcium sulfate, are also present and indicate past volcanic activity and the potential for acidic soil conditions. Martian soil contains volatile elements such as carbon, nitrogen, and hydrogen, but in significantly lower quantities than Earth's soil. The limited presence of water in the form of ice within the soil presents challenges for sustaining human settlements. One of the major concerns associated with Martian soil is the presence of perchlorates, which can be highly toxic to humans. Perchlorates can interfere with thyroid function, affecting metabolism and overall health. Mitigating the effects of perchlorates on human health would be a significant challenge for future Martian settlers. And if these components of the Martian soil aren't enough, there is more. The composition of Martian soil offers minimal protection against cosmic radiation and solar particles. The lack of a robust magnetic field and thin atmosphere on Mars increases the exposure of inhabitants to harmful radiation, which poses significant health risks, including increased cancer rates and DNA damage. And then there are the heavy metals. Martian soil contains various heavy metals, such as lead, arsenic, and mercury, which can be harmful to human health. These elements, if present in high concentrations, can lead to long-term health issues and require careful monitoring and remediation strategies. Martian soil also lacks sufficient nitrogen and carbon, crucial elements for plant growth and agriculture. These deficiencies present challenges for cultivating crops and sustaining food production for a human settlement. Phosphorus and potassium, essential macronutrients for plant growth, are also limited in Martian soil. Addressing these deficiencies would require innovative approaches to soil enrichment and nutrient supplementation. Trace elements such as zinc, copper, and manganese, necessary for healthy plant development, are also relatively scarce in Martian soil. These deficiencies would require tailored fertilization strategies or alternative agricultural techniques to ensure optimal crop growth. The combination of nutrient deficiencies, limited organic matter, and the presence of toxic compounds makes Martian soil inherently infertile. Overcoming these challenges would necessitate extensive soil modification and fertilization methods, and there is much more to be researched with respect to living on Mars.
And what about the toxicity of living on Mars? The soil is toxic. The air is mostly carbon dioxide. It's toxic. Everything is toxic. Can you imagine living in a nuclear waste dump?
I can.
Living.
Well,
You're literally, your dome. Imagine you had a geodesic dome,
right.
and your dome is in the middle of a toxic dump.
Well, you better make sure that that dome is sealed really, really, really well, which would actually stress me like crazy.
Yeah, it would be incredibly stressful.
Wouldn't you be stressed?
Radiation leaks.
Yes.
And if, let's say you go for a stroll, let's say you take that hour or two to get your suit on, check your life support systems, make sure everything is, double check, triple check. Redundancy is going to be huge on Mars. Make sure everything's perfect before you walk out that door. So you go for a walk, right? And you bring back in, you're stomping around on the ground, on the soil. You bring in some of that toxic soil, right? There's the stress of that. What if that toxic soil ends up internally in your workspace, right? You're a cleaner. Tabitha Stevens is immaculate. She is impeccable when it comes to a clean home. Can you imagine knowing that if this Martian soil gets into your home, that you could be affected physically?
I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it.
See, we would need strong psychological evaluations first.
Right.
Because that's stress. That's stress. Imagine living in the middle of Chernobyl, where there was a nuclear meltdown. Like, that's where you live. That's the irradiated component, the toxicity of your environment.
And you're hoping it doesn't leak into your living quarters or your workspace.
Yeah, just that stress alone would be incredible. And I never hear people talk about that. I never hear people consider that, how mentally strong you would have to be. And the redundancy in the systems to protect you.
Right.
We rock climb. We've done a lot of rock climbing. And let's say you're top roping. What you do when you do a top rope is you climb to the top of the rock, you set a couple of anchors, you run your rope through it, and then on the bottom of the rock wall, one person belays, one person climbs. Well, you generally want 2 or 3 anchors on top. Redundancy. So if one fails, you've got a backup, or preferably even 3, okay? So this redundancy is a big issue when it comes to life and death situations. On Mars, boy, you better be redundant in everything, because we know mechanical things, electrical things fail. And no doubt, given we haven't been living on Mars yet, we really don't know exactly what we're up against when it comes to the weather, when it comes to radiation, when it comes to those extreme temperatures and the tolerances our materials have relative to those extreme temperatures. And this will be in our minds when we're on Mars. We're going to be some really stressed out aliens living on Mars. That's for certain.
Often not considered when suggesting Mars as a possible destination for mankind are the psychological issues such as long-distance communication and isolation. Living on Mars would mean significant physical and psychological isolation from Earth. Due to the vast distance between the two planets, communication delays can range from several minutes to over 20 minutes, depending on the alignment of the planets. This delay would impede real-time decision-making, posing challenges in emergency situations and requiring increased autonomy for the Martian settlement. Additionally, the isolation and confinement of living in a small, isolated community for extended periods could have adverse psychological effects on the astronauts, necessitating comprehensive support systems and strategies to ensure mental well-being. As humanity embarks on the ambitious mission of establishing a permanent settlement on Mars, it is essential to understand the psychological challenges that would accompany such an endeavor. The colonization of Mars presents a profound shift in human existence, as individuals are confronted with a host of psychological challenges arising from the isolation, confinement, and demanding nature of life on a distant planet. Understanding these issues is crucial for designing effective support systems and interventions to safeguard the mental health and well-being of Martian settlers. The sheer distance of Mars from the Earth is the first psychological point to come to terms with. Living on Mars would mean being millions of miles away from the familiarity of Earth, family, and friends. The psychological strain of being physically distant and disconnected from loved ones can lead to feelings of loneliness, homesickness, and emotional distress. Even here on our home planet, despite its population of so many billions of humans, loneliness and feelings of isolation often lead to severe depression and mental illnesses. Living on a planet millions of miles from Earth and with limited interactions with any form of other life forms could be mentally catastrophic. The small size of the Martian settlement and the limited number of inhabitants would result in a restricted social environment. The lack of diverse social interactions and the challenges of building and maintaining relationships can contribute to social isolation and psychological strain. We have no idea of what the psychological implications could be. In addition, the significant distance between Mars and Earth would introduce substantial communication delays, ranging from several minutes to over 20 minutes each way. These delays disrupt real-time conversations and pose challenges in emergency situations, potentially leading to feelings of isolation and reduced support systems. The time lag in communication can hinder the decision-making process, requiring increased autonomy and self-reliance for the Martian settlers. Decisions that need immediate attention may be delayed, potentially leading to additional stress and pressure on individuals. The psychological profile of human inhabitants on Mars would be significant. It could be that the optimum profile would lean towards self-reliant introverts much more than extroverts. The ability of Martian astronauts to maintain strong psychological health alone and in isolation may be critical. Those with personalities which require external stimuli may not qualify for prolonged missions on Mars. Add to this the scarcity of essential resources, it may be that the pool of humans which could survive on Mars will be extremely limited until such a time as extensive colony exists. Establishing a self-sustaining colony on Mars would require careful resource management and conservation. Limited access to vital resources such as water, food, and energy can generate psychological stress and anxiety regarding survival and well-being. The need for self-sufficiency in resource production and recycling would place significant responsibility on individuals and the community as a whole. The pressure to ensure the sustainability of the settlement can result in additional psychological burdens and stress. Space missions to Mars would involve prolonged periods of confinement in a limited space, such as spacecraft or habitats. Confinement can lead to psychological issues like claustrophobia, irritability, and a sense of being trapped. The monotony and routine of daily life in space, where each day is similar to the previous one, can lead to boredom, demotivation, and a sense of stagnation. The absence of novelty and variety can negatively impact mental well-being. Robust psychological support systems, including regular counseling, social support networks, recreational activities, and opportunities for personal growth, would be essential to address the long-duration effects of space missions on mental health. And these psychological challenges are only a small portion of the equation in creating living ecospheres on the planet Mars. Health risks and certain adaptations will also be critical for the success of Martian missions. Extended exposure to reduced gravity environments can lead to various health complications. Mars has only about 38% of Earth's gravity, which could lead to muscle atrophy, bone density loss, and cardiovascular issues among inhabitants. Mitigating these risks would require regular exercise, countermeasures and monitoring of astronauts' health. Moreover, as previously noted, exposure to Martian dust, which contains toxic substances, poses additional health risks, necessitating effective filtration and decontamination systems.
So what about the water again, Gary?
The water.
Yeah, water on Mars. How are we getting water on Mars?
Well, we talk about this a lot because we do a lot of filming and exploring in desert landscapes. And water's a big issue, especially in the summer. So we're near Death Valley, like I said before. And when you go to Death Valley, especially in the summer, maybe it's 120, 125 degrees, all you're thinking about is water, right? And you never see it. It is absolutely barren. So some people might say, hey, well, it would be just like being in Death Valley. No, it won't be just like being in Death Valley. You see, here's the deal. Death Valley, though it is one of the most extreme arid climates on the planet, actually has a lot of water. There's water underground if you drill. And as we know from personal experience, in the mountains, the ranges around Death Valley, if you know where to go, there are natural springs with water bubbling right up out of the earth. It's there for the taking. On Mars, that's a no-go. Where are you going to find those bubbling springs of water up in the mountains on Mars, right?
You're not.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'd be seeing what?
We would see
Grasses
rivers and flow and
grasses
potentially
life.
some life.
Yes.
Now, we know, as we've expressed already, that at the polar regions there may be ice of some sort, but it's going to require power to melt it down. And if we're drilling, if in fact there's water underground in Mars, that's going to require some significant drilling. How far down would we have to go? And then once you've drilled down, you've got to have pumps. You've got to pump that water up.
Extract it, yeah.
So we're going to have some fantastic solar powered plants or other forms of power, energy production, to get the water to the humans living on Mars. Might not be that easy. You know, we take these things so for granted, right?
Yes.
When we need water, what do? We
just open up a little bottle and we're good.
go to the convenience store, grab your water, you're good to go.
Get out to the hills. Yes.
Right?
So.
It's not going to be that way. And again, we go back to the psychology of it. It's always going to be in your head. Wow, I hope that pump doesn't fail, because I'm not a pump mechanic, and I'm going to have to put that 20-minute call into Earth and wait another 20 minutes back and hope that this crazy weather, this dust storm going on, isn't destroying all my equipment out there. Incredibly stressful.
Martian environment is not suitable for human existence without significant scientific and medical advances. Living on Mars presents a myriad of physical challenges that differ significantly from those experienced on Earth. From reduced gravity to limited resources, it is vital to comprehend and address these challenges to create a sustainable and healthy environment for Martian settlers. The cardiovascular system also undergoes changes in reduced gravity, including a decrease in blood volume and altered fluid distribution. These changes can result in cardiovascular deconditioning, orthostatic intolerance, and increased risk of cardiovascular diseases. Regular exercise and physiological adaptations would be crucial to maintain cardiovascular health. Long-duration space travel exposes astronauts to increased levels of radiation, including cosmic rays and solar flares, which can damage DNA and increase the risk of cancer and other radiation-related illnesses. Shielding systems and advanced radiation protection measures are necessary to safeguard the health of astronauts during the journey to Mars. The thin atmosphere on Mars provides little protection from harmful cosmic radiation and solar particles. Settlements on Mars would require effective radiation shielding measures, both within habitats and during extravehicular activities, to minimize the risks to human health. The Martian atmosphere is primarily composed of carbon dioxide, with trace amounts of nitrogen and argon. The low oxygen content poses challenges for human respiration and would necessitate the development of reliable life support systems to maintain breathable air for the settlers. And what about one of the most critical elements necessary for any life here on Earth, which, when transplanted to Mars, would be absolutely necessary? Water. Water is crucial for sustaining human life, but Mars has limited accessible water sources. Establishing effective water extraction and recycling systems, as well as developing methods to utilize subsurface ice deposits, would be essential for long-term habitation. How could water be extracted from Mars? Water is essential for human survival, serving as a fundamental resource for drinking, agriculture, and manufacturing on Earth. Likewise, access to water is critical for the long-term viability of a Martian settlement, as it supports life support systems, enables resource utilization, and sustains various human activities. While liquid water is not readily available on the Martian surface due to the planet's thin atmosphere, there is evidence of past water flow, indicating the presence of ancient rivers, lakes, and possibly subsurface reservoirs. Mars has extensive ice deposits in its polar regions and beneath the surface. These deposits consist of a mixture of water ice, dust, and other volatile compounds, and they serve as the primary target for water extraction efforts. The extraction of water on Mars presents logistical challenges due to the planet's vast surface area, uneven distribution of resources, and the need for precise targeting of areas with higher water concentrations. Water extraction requires significant energy inputs, particularly for processes such as melting ice, breaking molecular bonds, and pumping and filtering water. Mars settlers would need efficient energy sources, such as solar power, to meet these demands. Developing and deploying robust and reliable technologies for water extraction on Mars is crucial. The infrastructure needed for drilling, mining, and processing Martian ice deposits would require careful planning and engineering. Drilling into the Martian surface can access subsurface ice deposits. Various drilling techniques, including thermal drilling, pneumatic drilling, and laser drilling, have been proposed to extract water from different depths. Thermal methods involve heating the ice to melt it, creating liquid water for extraction. This can be achieved using solar concentrators, radioisotope heaters, or geothermal heat sources. Melting can also be facilitated by deploying inflatable or heated probes. Mining techniques such as mechanical excavation or the use of robotic diggers can be employed to extract ice-rich regolith. These methods involve the excavation and processing of surface or near-surface materials containing ice. ISRU, or in situ resource utilization, involves utilizing Martian resources to support human activities, including water extraction. It encompasses techniques such as utilizing the Martian atmosphere for water production through processes like atmospheric condensation or electrolysis. Water is critical for sustaining life support systems, including drinking water, hydration, and hygiene. It would also support the production of oxygen through electrolysis for breathable air.
So let's talk about confinement and isolation.
Remember when COVID happened? Do you remember that? Wasn't fun times. No. So, how did you feel then? You weren't happy. I don't think anybody on this planet was happy. Now imagine you're living on Mars, Garrett.
Well, that would be a normal day, right? There were a lot of people who entered into forms of depression they had never experienced before because they were confined during COVID, right? It's a huge mental health issue at this point. Now imagine that's a normal day every day, whether you like it or not. That confinement, that isolation, that lack of social contact. And the only social contact you're going to have is your teammates, the people with you on Mars, which most likely will be a very small group. Okay? That's it. So consider this. If our psychology has to evolve or be medicated or some such and altered to such an extreme to handle the extreme situations on Mars, are we even human anymore? What parts of our humanity are we going to have to give up? Are we willing to do that? Because we will not be the same entity psychologically if we're thriving on Mars. It's impossible. We'll be different creatures entirely.
Assuming the energy necessary for extraction and filtration of water is viable on Mars is realistic, this will be a monumental step forward in overcoming some of the obstacles surviving on Mars will encompass. And what about food? Initially, food would be supplied from Earth. However, any long-term survival on Mars would require food to be grown and harvested locally on the Martian surface. The scarcity of fertile soil and the absence of readily available nutrients pose challenges for agriculture on Mars. Innovations such as hydroponics, aeroponics, and other controlled environment agriculture methods would be vital to ensure a sustainable food supply. Establishing a self-sustaining human settlement on Mars requires the ability to grow food in a resource-limited and harsh environment. food production is vital for the long-term sustainability and self-sufficiency of a Martian settlement. Growing crops on Mars would provide fresh and nutritious food, contribute to psychological well-being, and reduce dependence on Earth for supplies. As noted earlier, the Martian soil, or regolith, is rich in minerals, but contains high levels of perchlorates, which are toxic to most plants. Perchlorates need to be removed or mitigated to create a suitable environment for crop growth. The Martian regolith lacks some essential nutrients required for plant growth, such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Supplementing these nutrients would be necessary to support healthy plant development. The lower gravity on Mars, about 38% of Earth's gravity, poses challenges for plant growth and development. Plants may experience altered root growth, reduced structural strength, and changes in water uptake and distribution. Adaptations and technologies would be required to support plant growth in reduced gravity conditions. Mars has higher radiation levels compared to Earth due to the thin atmosphere and lack of a strong magnetic field. Radiation can damage plant DNA, impair photosynthesis, and inhibit growth. Protective measures, shielding, and genetic modifications may be necessary to mitigate radiation effects. So what could some of the agricultural strategies for Mars be? Controlled Environment Agriculture, CEA. CEA methods, such as hydroponics, aeroponics, and vertical farming, provide controlled conditions for plant growth. These systems use nutrient-rich water solutions and artificial lighting to optimize plant growth, minimize resource consumption, and maximize yield. Martian regolith can be processed and used as a growing medium or as a source of minerals for plant nutrition. Regolith-based substrates, combined with nutrient supplements, could provide a sustainable and locally sourced solution for plant growth. Closed-loop systems. Closed-loop systems aim to minimize resource consumption and waste by recycling and reusing water, nutrients, and organic matter. Implementing closed-loop systems would reduce dependence on external resources and increase the sustainability of Martian agriculture. Bioregenerative life support systems, BLSS. BLSS integrate plant cultivation, waste processing, and atmospheric management to create a self-sustaining ecosystem. Plants play a crucial role in purifying air, recycling nutrients, and providing food, creating a symbiotic relationship between plants and humans. And the importance of sustainable practices cannot be understated. On Mars, resources such as water, energy, and nutrients are scarce. Adopting efficient irrigation techniques, using renewable energy sources, and maximizing resource utilization would be crucial for long-term agricultural sustainability. And for all of this to work, we must create sustainable energy and power generation. Establishing a sustainable energy infrastructure on Mars would be crucial for long-term human settlement. Solar power is a viable option as Mars receives ample sunlight, but the efficiency of solar panels would be reduced due to the planet's greater distance from the sun. Alternative energy sources, such as nuclear power or innovative technologies, might need to be explored to ensure a stable and reliable energy supply for the settlement's needs. Dependence on Earth for energy supplies is impractical for a self-sustaining Martian settlement. Relying on regular resupply missions from Earth is costly, time-consuming, and not sustainable in the long run. Mars experiences significant temperature fluctuations and long nights, posing challenges for continuous energy supply. Efficient energy storage systems, such as batteries or other advanced technologies, would be required to store surplus energy during the day for use during nighttime or low solar availability periods. Solar energy is the primary and most abundant energy source on Mars. Deploying solar panels or arrays on the Martian surface or rooftops of habitats and utilizing concentrated solar power can generate electricity for various applications. Developing more efficient and resilient solar panels capable of withstanding dust storms and maintaining high conversion efficiency in low light conditions is crucial for maximizing energy generation on Mars. Mars's thin atmosphere still holds potential for wind energy generation. Deploying wind turbines in suitable locations with consistent wind patterns could provide a complementary energy source to solar power. Nuclear power, specifically small-scale fission reactors or eventually fusion reactors, could provide a compact and efficient power source for Mars. Advanced reactor designs and stringent safety protocols would be necessary to ensure the viability of nuclear power on the planet. In situ resource utilization, ISRU. ISRU involves utilizing local resources to meet energy needs. For example, extracting and utilizing Martian regolith or minerals for energy production, such as through chemical processes or heat extraction, could reduce reliance on external supplies. While the prospect of humans living on Mars is both awe-inspiring and challenging, it is important to recognize the multifaceted obstacles that must be overcome. The harsh environment, limited resources, communication delays, health risks, and energy demands are just a few of the challenges that would need to be addressed to establish a sustainable and thriving human settlement on Mars.
So I think it's clear by now that we have serious issues to deal with respect to the possibility of living on Mars. Scientifically, physiologically, psychologically, there are huge, monumental mountains, beyond mountains to overcome to make this all work. And now I'd like to share a little bit of our story. A few years back, we spent about 3 or 4 years living in a remote corner of North America. And we spent nearly every day,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Off exploring in deep wilderness locations, mostly arid desert where there's very little life. And during that time, we saw very few human beings. In fact, we were in such extreme environments that an entire year went by, and I think in that year we saw maybe 3 or 4 other people out there, correct?
That's true. That is true. Yes.
So we're talking about extreme solitude. Tabitha Stevens and I have a deep intrinsic understanding of what solitude is really all about because we did it. We did it for years. We would trek off, not see another human being, see very little life. We were hunting for photo ops, movie locations, things like that. For years we did this. And I gotta tell you something, what happened?
We went a little bit nutty. To the point of we didn't even know if we had friends anymore, or if we did have friends, did they even care about us? Because psychologically, you get inside of your own head thinking, oh, well, nobody's calling, nobody's texting, wow, nobody's reaching out to us to see how we're doing. And then you start getting really sad. So when you're out exploring, those things will get in your head and you'll just start overthinking, even when you're supposed to be enjoying yourself. You don't really, because it all gets into you.
And that's on planet Earth.
And that's on planet Earth.
So we experienced, as Tabitha just stated, a point where we were going batshit crazy. We were going nuts because we had no exposure to any other human beings. We had self-imposed a sort of a sabbatical, an extreme sabbatical, where we were not around any other human beings. And a lot of people might think, wow, what a wonderful existence that would have been. And this is what we thought. And we were wrong. We were so wrong, because after years of solitude in that way, we were slowly going crazy. We sold our place out there. We moved back to Las Vegas. We said we need to feel energy. We need to feel people. We need to feel creativity. We need to feel vibrance. We need to be back among other humans again. And thank God we did, because if we had continued down that path of extreme isolation, we probably would have lost our noodles completely. And that's the truth. This is our story. We know intrinsically, with great detail, what extreme solitude means and what it does to the human mind. And that's on Earth. Again, that's knowing all we had to do is jump in the Land Rover and drive a couple 100 miles, and we could eat some pizza. We could go for a swim. We could jump in a jacuzzi. We could get ice cream, or all these needs or desires that we want were right down the road, and they certainly weren't millions of miles away. And so the psychology might just be the biggest hurdle. And I'll say it one more time. What will we become as human beings? Will we be Homo sapiens sapiens anymore if our psychology has to transform to such a degree that we're not ourselves anymore, that we no longer need to be around other human beings? That's something to think about. Thanks so much for joining us on this little adventure. Tabitha and I have to head back to the set. We're filming this really cool science fiction movie right now. We really appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you in the next documentary.
See you then.